And we are live. Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon if you're in the US, or good morning if you're on the, hang on, what is it, West Coast. We are live across America and England for the second time this week. So thank you very much, Drew, for joining us.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me with you guys. Pleasure to be here.
It's not a problem at all. So I'm going to hand straight over for Drew. He's going to give us a cutting demo. Good luck, mate.
Great. Thanks, Simon. All right, everybody, welcome. My name is Drew Schaefering. I am here in Brooklyn, New York. Here in the Crux space today, we're going to be doing a haircut. And what I wanted to kind of go through and share and talk about was kind of how do we approach our haircuts? You know, especially moving back into the salon and having clients that are going to be, they're going to be a different beast, and kind of to use that term, but they're going to be having different expectations, and they're going to be really dealing with a lot more emotionally. And so it's going to kind of have the opportunity, or it could possibly throw us off balance a little bit. So really, what happens when we get a client in our chair and it's like, where do we approach it from? You know, we all traditionally are taught start in the back, approach it working with your perimeter and work forward. And one thing that I've been really kind of working and doing more diligence with myself is, why can we not start right here in this part of the haircut, because the client has layers that work for it, and then work backwards. So most of us, we get out of bed in the morning, and if we have somewhere to go, we go from point A to B to C to D. Well, once we've gone through that line, we'll refer it to like a haircut. You should be able to start at any point and work your way backwards and forwards, because you're using the middle points as guides. So what we're going to be doing with her is we're going to be approaching it from the front, and we're going to be doing a shorter mid-length cut. We're going to be hitting something where there's a fringe that's draping through the cheekbone, and then a bridge length that's going to be hitting just below the jawline, and then we might leave some length in the back, we might not. But the whole principle and the reason we're approaching it this way is it's kind of putting the puzzle pieces together with an approach that gives us the fluidity to say, hey, this is feeling right, let's go this direction, or we can kind of switch it up without being too bought in. So just starting off, we're going to start in the front, so let's take a radial parting, and just separate the front from the back there.
It's so good to have sort of a camera lady, which is your girlfriend. So thank you very much for being the camera lady tonight.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, Nina. So Nina is the one responsible. She's also a colorist, very talented educator, and she did the color on this mannequin, as well as the face art. You know, in the beginning of the lockdown situations, we were getting on and doing more and more with our dolls, and just didn't like the faces on them, so started kind of making a little bit more of an art piece out of it, just for some giggles. So working still with a profile parting, but just blocking off everything behind the radial, just tucking that away nice. And now we're gonna set in our fringe section to start. So we're gonna go profile, just down center. And we're gonna go 2 ticks back. So if we flip her head forward, the first slope is usually the hairline. The second slope is into that higher forehead area, or the bridge. And then once we get up here, this is ground where this hair can pop over to the side. So we want to stay in that middle round, and we're going to create a rounded fringe. So the whole reason for a rounded fringe, if you want to get up here, is it's giving us more density of hair in the fringe section than if we were to take straight lines. So if we look at this curved situation here, the difference between right in this area is the added distribution of weight that we're putting down there. So curved section giving us a little bit more hair, and this is just a very little detail of the things that make all the difference. You know, one thing I was always kind of puzzled by and taken back with in school was why we always started the haircut in the back and ended in the front, when, you know, our clients are always begging to see changes in the front. Not many people are really struggling to find change in the back. So this is like the most important piece to most clients. So this is where we're going to start, and we're going to start taking a middle section down the center, about the width of the space between her eyes, so about my thumb's width. And we're going to bring this down using the fine teeth. I work with a really long comb. This is the Crux brand Essential Comb. And the fine and the white teeth is really what gives us just great flexibility through here to stay consistent. And I'm going to go bridge of the nose right through here. So with all of the cutting today, we're going to be working with keeping a much softer result than usual. And I think that, you know, it's much easier to make a soft line hard than it is to make a hard line soft. And so kind of keeping with a softer feel throughout the cut that we can always strengthen up is a lot easier for us today, because the end result we want to have that energy of a sense of softness to it. We don't want to have to go in and do more texturizing. It's all about working efficiently with this.
Just to jump in on you, Drew, there's a lot of people commenting, half from Ireland, Scotland, Warrington in the UK, you've got India, Cyprus, Northern Ireland, so they're all over the world watching. Whereabouts are you again, Drew?
Fantastic. Thanks, guys, for joining in and saying, hey, I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, here in the space today, and we've been kind of, everything's still starting to open up here in New York. Hope everyone's staying safe and doing well all over the world. So here we're going to extend, you know what, I think I'm going to extend this side out just a bit, making sure to double check. If something looks slightly off, go back and double check it, as opposed to just getting too ahead of ourselves. And we're going to continue with this fringe draping down into the cheekbone. So, you know, a lot of us have the tendency to work and go this way and follow our fingers, which is a great, you know, linear cutting method. To fill in, if I don't want a straight line, I want to let this drop down, creating more of like a face framing effect. I'm draping, I'm combing that hair towards the front of the face, and I'm extending my fingers out and holding that hair there. So I can see it in its natural fall, and I can cut up to my length, whereas if I followed my fingers, I would have dropped all of that. So that's giving us a bit more length to play with and giving us a more round shape in through here. So I'm going to go refine that.
So we've got a couple of questions for you. Claire Daniels has said, would you always cut the fringe wet or would you normally dry it?
Good question, Clint. Honestly, it depends on each haircut. Is very different. If it's a big change and if it's somebody with a new fringe, I usually work it wet, but I leave it on the long side. If you know, when I do a lot of dry hair cutting, there are times when I'll do a complete dry cut. It's a great question.
Thank you. And the second question is, does this help with people with thin hairlines? Not a lot of hair in the in the front and the sides.
Yes. So this is huge. So if you have, and you know, most of our clients, a lot of people have really thin hairlines. If you look at the shape of the section that we have, and if you take my comb into the idea of what we normally do a triangle, this curved line right back here is adding all of this hair to the section in the fringe. So it's giving us that much more density. Now it can also come into play. So if she's brushing and blow drying her hair away, we're putting bangs into the sides. So it's a conversation piece, but it's definitely a helpful tip. Huge. All right. So we're going to keep getting on with it. And now we have this kind of in play. Everything's working nice. We're finding balance. You know, it's not about perfect twins all the time. It's about sense of balance through our haircuts. So I'm going to take just this little extra bit off. And if you've noticed, as we've been cutting today, I'm keeping my scissors very parallel into the hair and really utilizing my ring finger as a sense of balance to get this texture in so that I have a little bit more of a liberated, free feel to it. So here we go. We're going to take a diagonal back section. So we're still working in front of the radial. And we're going to take a diagonal back from the tip of our fringe section to complete the perimeter. So but the goal with this is it's putting the puzzle pieces together. Sorry if there's some noise in the background, everybody. Brooklyn trucks. What can you do, right? We have this puzzle piece, and now here the side, right? And we're going in this length for the side. and kind of allowing hair to have a certain energy to it. We don't want to always assume it's going to be straight, right? More and more, a lot of our clients are going to be embracing this kind of less kept look that they've probably found. And some of them found it and they think that it's amazing. And then there's going to be others who are going to want very polished back to it. So I'm going to go straight across with this. And using my longer comb is really a great measure and a metric for us to look at as a straight line. So I'm just kind of using my white comb to find like where that length is going to sit, grabbing and establishing the hair, mimicking my comb. My ring finger slides out, and now we can go in and point cut, sliding along and leaving a bit of ends out of that bottom and that length. So we're getting a lot of texture, cutting more condensed sections without sacrificing quality. All right, so let's drop this same side. We're going to complete this whole side before we cut the other. I wanted to step into this today and show how I go through a haircut. This by no means is the only way or the best way. This is my way and what works really well for me and my experiences. And normally, I go through, kind of have the same systems. I generally try to find balance on both sides before moving forward. And I found that having this time to pause and reflect and, not be so busy and monkey-minded with everything going on, it's allowing me to kind of like challenge my own patterns. So right there, I would have normally switched to the other side, created balance, but I was really just in the moment of trusting my gut, saying, no, I'm going to challenge that. And I do the haircut differently, not get into my own patterns. Because the challenge with doing this whole side before you start the other side is finding balance. What happens if I cut the other side too short now? I have to come back and cut this one all over again, right?
Lynette Murray's asked, do you use any cutting agent sprays, or do you spray anything into the hair to cut?
Yeah, so Lynette, I used an oil today, and we're just going to keep using water before we get into the product. I typically use several products when I'm cutting, and that's usually just kind of layering the products into the hair that's going to be used in the style. So far it's just a bit of oil, and we're going to be adding some as we go. All right, same thing, opposite side. So one thing to help, a lot of times if we're cutting one length and we're down here on the skin, that's absolutely a good approach to it. The way that I found is tilt their head to the opposite side. So let me adjust her. If I tilt her right ear to her right shoulder, that enables me to get in here without my body having to go down and kind of get out of it. So whenever you want to build weight, push the head away from you. Using the fine teeth of the comb, control. Same place, establishing that length, letting my ring finger do all of the balancing, and I'm just cutting up. So now here you can see in this side of my knuckle, it's pinched in. I don't want to cut that. I want to come back down and bring it straight down. We would have had a buildup of length right there for no reason. So just always controlling what we're cutting.
So I'll take this time an opportunity to thank Darren Oram for recommending you. How do you know Darren?
Yeah. I met Darren probably 7 or 8 years ago in Barcelona. I was part of the artistic team to relaunch Techni Art there, and got the chance to meet him there. And then, Darren since has come over to the U.S. and he's the VP of Education and has been doing some really good things with us, especially in these challenging times. So he's a solid guy. I can't speak highly enough about him. How long have you known him?
I was in the L'Oreal art team. Well, it's an RD team. I don't know what the American equivalent is, but that was 4 years ago now when I first met him.
Okay.
So yeah, only 4 years, but he's a wonderful man, and he's come to our saviour when I decided I wanted to do an American theme week.
Yeah.
A lot of people are interested in what other countries are doing, and it kind of brings me nicely onto these questions here, which are, when is your salon reopening?
So I'm a freelance artist who takes clients in a few different salons. and as well as private and home. The private and home is probably going to be picking up a little bit more. Up until now, it's been reserved for more celebrity people or people who just want a private experience. And I think that that is going to start up pretty soon, given the fact that we can't be in too many people, in one space. But in New York, they haven't lifted any of the working bans for hairstylists. So we're still in I think 2 weeks away from potentially going back to work, but not yet. Is that right, Nina?
I think longer.
So yeah, it's going to be looking like another month probably.
Wow. Eleni from Cyprus has asked, what is your price range for cutting?
So my price varies differently, and what I will say is that I'm in New York and I can charge a little bit more money. I don't put a price on quality and talent, so I'll preface with that. But my prices start at $250 for a haircut and go up. Okay, so let's have a look here and make sure that we're balanced. So what we've done is we essentially just cut the front half of the head, and I always tend to leave the second side longer so I don't have to go back and cut the first side. And so you can see I've done this. So here's an easy way to kind of go through and just filter off some weight. So if we kind of gauge, so we have about 1/8 of an inch or a little bit to cut off through here. So just kind of eyeballing that. Now we're just going to go through and filter out some of that weight, because this is something that happens, and especially when we're creating and being a little bit more free thinking in terms of approaching things, not being as maybe strict or technically disciplined, that technical skill will come in. It's just all about finding ways of getting the same job done, or a better job done in less time, or whatever the challenge is. So there we go. All right, so we've cut the entire front, except we haven't layered anything through here. So now we're going to go into the layering part. The back, a lot of times when I go into schools or when I go into salons and do workshops, one of the best things that people start to soak up is realizing you can start a haircut anywhere. Because when we do workshops on doll heads and we learn a haircut, yes, that's great. You learn that haircut and it's perfect. There's a lot to be learned in health from that. But when you learn how to work with the client's hair that's pre-existing and then start to work on that and learn how to work cuts from the inside out, backwards, forwards, that's when you really start to kind of open things up. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep taking pivoting sections. We're going to start here in the back, working a diagonal forward. And I'm elevating everything up to the middle. So my comb is parallel to my parting line. And I'm bringing everything up to the center in the fringe. So we're up to a center profile guide. And what I'm looking for is just this hair here. I'm going to start just slicing into all of this, just creating a lot more weight removal. So it'll build some shape, but right now it's more of a weight removal system that we're working with. We're not so much graduating. And I'm just coming through and using a slicing technique. So working with same teeth on the comb for all the sections. I'm making a peace sign with my hand right now, and what that's doing is it's enabling me to grab the hair here, establish my angle, triple clamp there, see that here? So we normally tend to hold with our hands on this side. Instead, if we go here and I have my fingers on this side, I then can establish another layer of tension, open my shears and cut as I go through the section, just breaking up those ends significantly more. So let's see how that's starting to fall.
So while you're checking that, let's touch base, because we actually, obviously Darren recommending you, it's no coincidence really, but Sebastian, he said he was one of your friends.
Yeah, Sebastian's lovely. How did it go with him yesterday, right? Sunday.
Was it yesterday? Sunday. But oh my God, he is incredible educator. He's so natural at what he does. It's incredible.
He really is. He's a good friend of mine, and hopefully somebody I'll get to see and work with more and more on the team. He's so talented. So last section in the front, and you can see, Nina, if we got this side. So you can see the difference in the sides with what's happening. this front side here, this is all square, no layering, and what we're doing is just filtering off that weight from that front bit with the layers. So last parting or last section in the front. And we'll bring this, again, everything's combs parallel to the parting or the section.
Tracy Dunbar's got a question for you, which she's complimented you earlier, by the way, on your posture, saying it's good to see someone using his knees. But she's asked what scissors, as you refer to as shears, what scissors are you using and what size, please?
Cheers, it's Tracy. I hope I'm saying that right. Thank you for the compliment, Tracy. These scissors are Casio. They're one of the first nicer pair of scissors that I got out of school, and it just kind of like I love the feel of them. They're the Casio Millennial scissors. Another brand that I love, Hairbrain makes on their store. I believe it's I don't believe they do international shipping, but it's a $300 price range. So it's a good shear to buy, and it's just like handmade Japanese steel, all the quality things that'll last you a long time. So scissors are such a personal preference. All right, so same thing we're going to do to this side. We're flipping, going pivoting sections, bringing them all here and knocking off that top. So here, now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing, pivoting sections, directing forward. I tend to teach, that we stand on the same side of the head, opposite. And this is one of those instances where it's kind of important, because here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have a tendency to do this and push this farther than it's going to need to be. So instead, I'm going to stand on the opposite side and pull it to me, because pulling is much more consistent for us. So comb matches our parting, coming up and in. I'm looking for that. There we go. That perimeter just dropped out. Do my triple clamp, and now we just slice off all of that. Same thing. Diagonal forward. And let's pop that down. So there's actually one thing that I find interesting. I was taking a class, or I was doing a workshop with a friend a long time ago, and he made the comment that, don't hold breath about it when we were cutting. And later on, I realized that he was actually speaking the truth. Most of the time when we're cutting hair, we get to this place, and we take a big breath, and then we hold it. Because then we don't want to sit here and be moving too much, or we don't want to take a breath and cut a wrong line. When in reality, I find if you actually breathe and sit with your sections longer, it serves you much better in the long run. So we're last section in the front, and I'm directing everything towards the face. Comb is still parallel, working with the long Essential Crux comb. It's 8 3/4 inch. And the reason for the long comb really is control. Before I started this brand and started making tools, I was using every comb, every tool possible. And I found that there was just not the need for all the excess and what was really essential and what was important. So it's a longer comb, enough fingers depth on each side, wide and short, small teeth. And then it's a nylon carbon fiber blend. So it gets all of that heat protection as well, or the heat protection is not going to melt, as well as it has a little bit more durability. So this is my go-to. All right. So this shape is good. We're locked in really well. Now we can just detail it towards the end. So let's keep working backwards, and we're going to determine if this is going to sink back or if it's going to stay level. And I think I'm going to make it sink back a little bit, have a little bit more of like that weighted, heavy, almost, we could say mullet, but it's not intended to be a mullet shape. So how we're going to do that is just by over direction, same thing. So I'm going to keep my diagonal back sections now. And the reason we're working a diagonal back is essentially we have this shape and this length, and we now want it to start working in a diagonal back section or a fashion. So we're starting to get that draping going. If we pick this up and cut it, it's going to fall back that way. So kind of lifting it up in a way so that it falls. Tilting her right ear to her right shoulder gives us better range in through here.
A lot of people saying that they'd love to come to New York. A few people saying they've been other places in America like Philadelphia, etc. Um, but Tracy's got back to us and said she actually uses the same scissor as you, and she was the one who asked the question. So that's incredible.
Great minds,
Lynette has
Tracy.
said, my friend Leon Gorman is in Brooklyn. He's an amazing session stylist. She says,
I've worked with Leon Gorman a few times on Fashion Week.
wow.
I'm sorry, I just interrupted you.
No, no, absolutely. That's what kind of what we want, really. But yeah, tell us about that because she just also complimented how good and the cut and colour is that you're doing.
Yeah, so Leon, so what I'm doing right now visually is I have a diagonal back section. I'm going to start cutting this line back down and away. And I'm going to keep working, pivoting my sections as I go. So yeah, I started my career in St. Louis, Missouri, and I got involved with Fashion Week early on. It was probably about 3 months out of school when L'Oreal Professional asked me to try out with them with their artistic team, and a friend of mine I met through that said, "Hey, why don't you come up to Fashion Week? Come up to New York." I had no idea what I was kind of getting in for. I was just so new in the industry, and Leon Gorman was one of the first shows that I worked with, and to be honest, I don't even remember the show. I don't remember the hair, the looks. They all start to blend in together. But what fascinated me was the ability to manipulate and work hair so quickly and so differently than what I had ever seen. I grew up in the salon world with my training, and it really just blew my mind how to work with the simplest little tricks that made all of the difference and the right amount of products. So it really opened up my world a little bit more. And from there, I started to work with Odile Gilbert, who's an amazing French hairdresser, and kind of got the bug to love New York and styling. And so 2.5, 3 years later after that, I moved up here, and I'm about 8 years in since. So we're still working, and really what I'm doing is, again, this is so essential, everybody. Keep using your ring finger. When we're working to put texture in through here, if you're not using something to stabilize and you're just floating, you're probably not getting a very soft result. And if you are, it's probably causing you much more stress than you need to. So just allowing your ring finger to come out through here, then you can just breathe and float on that section. So if we look at where that's going, so if we turn our profile, I actually kind of like where that's going. That's in a good place for me. So we're going to keep working that same angle. Now the trick is, how do we get that angle matched on both sides? So I'm setting up kind of reference points in my brain, working combs parallel to the same parting, and I went from that back corner to the middle of her neck, as if I'm cutting towards the middle right there. Now I'm going to have to try to repeat that same angle on the opposite side. Last section as a diagonal back on the left side, and then we'll carry things forward.
What a small world, and it shows how incredible the hairdressing community is that somebody's commented saying she knows someone from Brooklyn and you've worked with that person from Brooklyn, and it really is an incredible thing.
I gotta tell you what, there is, there's good and bad with every industry, but the hair industry really is so cool. It's so special. It's obviously not only do we get to cut and work with clients and really change how people feel about themselves, but just like the network and the people. I obviously am only where I got today because people opened a door for me to take an opportunity. And I find that in this industry, there's just so many good people that are willing to help you out. So keeping my line, my guides just straight through my fingers, just resting on my ring finger. Now my scissors are actually really dull. I don't work with sharp scissors, and I think that just happened by not having them sharpened over the period of time and working with it. So one trick is if you're working with more point cutting, and again, point cutting is point cutting whether we're up here, we're point cutting, we're moving weight vertically, or if we're horizontal, we're moving all the length. It's the same thing down here, the length or point cutting. So we really only want to close the scissor when we're drawing out. We don't want to go in and stab. 2 reasons. You get less of a soft result. The other reason is that you really just risk cutting yourself. So we close always on the way out. So much better result. So now here my line goes from the perimeter section on the front of our guide to the center back. So I know that this length through here is not going to change. So here, this is our guide from before. I'm going to bring that into that as a reference point to work towards. And we'll clip all this away.
Is it even a New York video if there is not a siren in the background?
You know what? I actually had to pay them to drive by and do that for you guys.
It's all about the authenticity here, mate.
Exactly. I was gonna have a pizza and everything else for you guys too. All right. So again, using a longer comb, just letting it do so much of the work. We're gonna carry this and bring it down towards the center of the nape. Now my line is going here, but I'm gonna start cutting down here. So I don't want my fingers all the way down to where my guide is, because what essentially that's going to do, that's going to keep us from creating any softness in these ends. So here's my guide. I'm going to step down and cut further away from my guide. Now we go back up and soften it the opposite direction. Just making sure there's no buildup of weight in it.
Tracy's come back and asked, how long did it take you to train and where did you train?
So Tracy, I actually went to school at the Salon Professional Academy in St. Louis, Missouri. And I think it was like a 9-10 month program. And it said what that does is you get your license. They teach you enough, you work on clients. But most of my training was well after school. And I joined L'Oreal Professional right out of the gate, and that was one of the best things I could have done because it really gave me time to train on essential things that every artist needed, as well as be exposed to really advanced processes and approaches to hair with the top artists. So my fundamentals are based in similar to like a Redken or a Sassoon technique approach. But I'm very much a mutt in terms of how I approach hair now. It's just kind of going with my gut and my experience. And I think a lot of it is it has to be gratifying for us too, right? It can't just be all about the client or all about one thing or the other. It has to work. And so when we change up how we approach it, it's going to change how we feel about it. It's going to do something different for us. All right. So we're just pulling this last section over and building that last little bit. Still, I want it to comb in natural fall. Now using the wide teeth of the comb, just following through it with our guide.
Matthew Watts come in, who's a friend of the watching from Scotland, has said, how much time do you spend on refining and personalising once the hair is dried? Loving this so far.
Cheers for that. Thank you. It's different with every client, with every haircut. If I'm doing a dry haircut, it's all personalizing from the beginning because you're able to kind of see that softness of it. With her, I don't know, we'll probably have to do just 5 minutes or so. But I tend to do the majority of my work before it gets completely dry. My thought is, if I want it all so refined, I'll do the haircut dry, the whole thing. But from here, the shape's pretty much set in there. Now it's just kind of working a few details. So 10% maybe, 15% tops. And so this side has been layered and cut. This side we did that in the front. This is the only corner. These two corners haven't been layered, so you can see the weight difference. And so this is part of approaching a haircut where it's most pivotal. All of this back and away from the face is really important. And now all these layers are important, and all of these layers are shortest here because they were travel or they were stationary guide. Now they're all longer here. We can continue that weight movements, also balancing with this longer perimeter in the back by continuing to bring everything forward. We're just not going to bring all this as far forward as the front because it won't reach. So we're going to take our stationary guide from here, and it's now going to be at the radial where we stopped last time. So we're going to take that last section we got in front of the round, or in front of the radial. All of this has been cut. And we're going to take a diagonal back, and we're going to keep working pivoting sections. And we'll do this first section. Maybe we'll have a traveling guide with previous distribution. Maybe it'll be stationary. But that's the beauty about kind of knowing how to work hair backwards and forwards, is it gives us those options. So here, let me do this. So I'm bringing my section behind the ear to the ear. I should have my guide. There it is, popping up right here and right here. So I have two guides that I'm working with. All of that gets caught. So now again, I make my triple clamp. I open my scissor as wide as I can, and it's not a scraping going through in and out that way. It's just going straight through the section and closing as I go through. And the idea is we're getting, soft blades of grass. It's just creating a more aggressive approach to layering and softening all this hair. If we look at what that just did for us, that just started to blend all of that. So we still have this nice weight buildup of shape, just doing one condensed sections, really kind of getting all the layering and the weight management in there. Now if we look, do we want to continue to this section and build up a maximum amount of weight, or do we want to do previous section? We're going to continue with a stationary guide for this. But let's say you're working this on a client, you're like, oh, I keep cutting a little bit more through here. Don't bring it to a stationary guide. Just keep section 2 to 1, section 3 to 2, etc. But we're bringing all this all the way to the radial. This is another thing I love about these long combs, and we all have our preferences, and this is something I had to learn to use this comb again as I was creating curriculum for L'Oreal Professional and really looking at what was essential for our attendees at our academies. What is the most important things that they need to build their toolkit and their box. And all of the cutting that we did was basically, based off the principles of learning the ins and the outs. So we thought a comb should have the same approach. No gimmicks and tricks, just knowing how to use the essential things and build from there. So this is looking really nice. The weight's sitting back. We have one last section coming to the radial. And again, it's all because we want the maximum length and weight towards the center back where we cut that length longer. So we're here making my peace sign, bringing it to the radial. My fingers match my comb. Comb finds my angle, my fingers find my guide, and there's my guide from before. So now we just filter that weight off. You can see the soft result that we get with that. It's much more kind of reminiscent of using a razor, but not fracturing it so much. We still keep and maintain some of those ends. So same thing, opposite side. So now I'll have you look over my shoulder. So she's getting a little dry. We're gonna add a little water back in. And this is also the time, when I'm speaking with my clients about all of their products and everything like that. We start the haircut's starting to show up, right? We're seeing the textures moving, the energy of it. So we're taking this diagonal back in this last section in front of the hair, front half of the head. We'll take all this away. Yep. All right. So tilting her head, her left ear to her left shoulder is helping me be able to get this angle better than having to be so tilted over with my body. So letting them move their head a little bit more is helping us. And we're coming straight, stationary guide. Just looking to see where we're at. Here's our guide through here. And our guide, and all this goes. There's a guide from the front, guide from the side. So bringing everything straight up, my peace sign. Comb finds it. Fingers hold it. And slice it off. So this is really a smooth motion. We're almost kind of rocking our scissors along our fingers as we go. Think of like kind of a mandolin or a bread slicer or even a guillotine thing if you want, whatever. Those time clock things. But working everything, pulling towards me. So notice I stood on that side for the left hair, the left back quarter. Now I'm on the right side. So that I can,
It's definitely a skill set, isn't it? Point cutting, it's its own sort of talent in itself, like razor cutting is, and I think that it's probably underestimated in how technical you can be with point cutting.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's terribly underestimated. I'll remember. I was taught to point cut by, hey, this looks like a heavy of a line. You didn't cut it correct straight. So if you didn't cut it all correct here, you point cut it to like fix your errors. Is really how I was taught to point cut. Um, and I think now, especially as we're seeing more shapes and more textures in hair than we have in the past. Before it was a little bit more about precision, a little bit closer to Sassoon. And what we're able to do now is reduce the weight, create shape at the same time. And it's essentially it's like minimizing the guest's impact. So they have to be in the chair less. They're getting what they want, and unless they're the client who's going to straighten their hair and wear it in that strong shape every day, I just don't see the point unless it's necessary. So it's just opening up a door for us, right?
Tracy has said again, there are so many ways to take weight out, and I love your perfect terminology.
Thank you.
Lynette has said, it's lovely watching how visual you are at cutting hair. I like that too. It makes me happy.
Thank you.
And lastly, we have Nicholas all saying she loves point cutting. She does a lot of it.
That's great, isn't it? That's if you're watching right now and you are having any trouble with point cutting, shout out and let me know, or let's talk about that, because it's something that we could sit here and have a class and a conversation, whoever's speaking, give them the floor, because we could talk about point for a long time. And it's, again, my most simple form is that when we point cut elevated here to take out weight, stay parallel with it, and then to take off all the length, we go horizontal. In that area, from horizontal to vertical, is going to be your sweet spot. So where you're taking off more length, you're working here. You're just reducing weight, we're working there. Same thing when we're down here. We're point cutting, we're reducing weight, taking off all length. So there's really, in this balance of both sides, that little 45-degree angle. And from there, it's all consistency. The ring finger technique of going across the length of it to keep stability. And we all find our own ways of making it work. Okay.
Absolutely. I do a lot of short hair and a lot of gents, and I think that it's sort of more significant to use this sort of technique in them cuts especially.
I think a lot of guys are used to just get the blending shear in and kind of go to town on it, and which is a great technique. I mean, it works. And then when you have somebody who's really meticulous with the point cutting and kind of giving it a little bit of different attention, as we've seen in the barbering thing the last few years, it's just kind of elevated so much more. So I'm going to hit pause on that, and I'm going to grab.
How beautiful that doll looks. It's incredible.
What was that, Simon? I know, it makes the haircuts look good. That's. All right, so then just working with a little styling agents and cream. The whole goal for this is to kind of give her a little bit more of a heaviness to the hair. I love when hair has a sense of that like heavy, almost oily bit to it. And sometimes it's hard to get that and achieve it, especially on the first day. So adding oil, a bit of salt beach spray, and then a cream to kind of give it a little bit more molecular weight. And then we'll do some dry cutting and some personalizing now before she's actually dry. And then, but when we get into the blow drying part, really just going to be using my hands and manipulating a little bit and not really touching it after that.
Your girlfriend Dewey's the camera lady, so hello. Has really definitely inspired me personally. I'm doing a live for Matrix in a couple of weeks on their social media, and I think that I'm going to have to decorate my doll after this.
Oh, I love that. I'm glad it could inspire you. I got the idea from Drew, so he inspired me.
So if you're watching this and you like the faces, Nina Rubel, who's also the lovely camera lady for today, is responsible for doing that. Her handle is at Nina Rubel. All right, we're gonna go through and just kind of filter out a little more weight if anything's showing up, and just kind of using our hands and just adding that texture into the hair to see what might not be looking just right. And the hair's not stopping wet anymore, so we can see it starting to come out. And I just want to soften this corner. I don't want it to be too horizontal, square feeling. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna drag this towards the front, wide teeth of the comb, just get a nice clean panel of hair. And then I'm gonna use my scissors and go parallel with it, open up, so my still blade is parallel to the hair. And we're just gonna go through and close using the heel of our blade. And we're gonna remove a decent amount of this weight. There we go. So now that softened that up a bit. Now let's do the same on the opposite side. So again, this hard line is what we just want to soften. We don't want to cut it all off. Just going to bring the hair forward towards the face. That corner shows up. Cut it off, then it would round that corner. Instead, we can just soften it. Come through using the wide part of the teeth and just cut, skip, cut. So the corner's still there. We don't remove it, but it allows that to kick back in through there. So where do we know the heaviest spots in the hair are going to be? We know the fringe is heavy because we cut it all at 0. So let's come through, and I'm just going to do just a tiny bit of surface cutting, just pinching and cutting the surface off some of these. I think talking about backgrounds and training, some of the best training I've received, it goes across the spectrum of, I've had some of the best training from the most disciplined, most technical haircuts and teachers, but some of the stuff that has taught me the most has been the least technical and more kind of intuitive or a slightly different approach. Just even as simple as watching some of the world's top hairstylists in the world cutting wigs backstage or cutting wefts, getting ready to go out on the runway, and watching how they approach it. It's just kind of like there's no frills, just get in there and do it. And I like to think that I'm kind of embracing a little bit more of that every season that goes past, every year. And if a piece of hair just looks like it needs to be cut, just cut it. Trust yourself if you're saying it, and just go with it. So everything, we got all this weight coming through, still bringing the hair forward. And the reason that we're bringing the hair forward as we're texturizing it right now is because when I take a diagonal back section, it doesn't even matter the section really. When you pull the hair out of its natural fall here, it's going to fall back that direction. And the reason we're pulling here is because all the hair is flowing back away from the face. So everything that we're doing is directed towards the purpose of the haircut, right? Started in the front, so it flows back away from the face. We want to keep with that with our setting as well. So last little bit, we have the V coming through into center back. We're going to keep working with these same sections. And then we're going to do one little trick in the crown to get some weight popping up through there, and we'll get her dry. So what inspired you, Simon? I have a question for you. What inspired you to get all this going? I love it.
Oh, thank you so much, man. So basically a lot of the followers might have heard this story already, but the problem I had was I felt I put a lot into an industry that I'd not necessarily had an opportunity to be. I don't know, I'd never had the stage that I wanted yet. So rather than complain I've not been given it, I thought I'd create my own stage and share knowledge with people I've worked with over the years, but I never expected it to grow to 11,000 in a few weeks.
It's amazing, man. Congratulations. It's really cool to see people doing awesome things that give back.
And thank you very much for coming on and giving your time, because I know obviously it's the middle of the day for you over there, and we're just settling down having a beer, and you're having to graph for us, so we do appreciate your time.
No, you know what? This is, I love doing it, and that's, part of why we're all here in this industry together. It's all good. I'll have my beer afterwards and think of you guys.
On that
All
note,
right.
I have just shared your social media handles on the page, so it's highlighted now on the page for everybody. It's Schaefering, and obviously follow her socials while you're over there.
Amazing, thank you. So same principles, and one thing that we want to be careful of when we're doing personalizing, texturizing, whatever it is you want to call it, is not to get too repetitive and kind of what I call typewriter. So if we do the same check, check, check every section, we're going to have kind of the same line in there. And even though it's falling, it's going to have too much of a repetition to it. I call it kind of like assembly line hair. Take a look at it, and we're going to go higher on one, and then we're going to drop lower and take a little bit more out. And we'll go higher, take a little bit less, go lower, take a little bit more. So we were breaking it up so that we're not creating any type of pattern or buildup of weight one way or the other in the hair. This last little bit off the crown, we're going to pull this section a little higher. So obviously elevation gives softness. The higher we pull it, the softer it'll fall. So we're going to take this crown through here, and we're going to elevate this up. So I'm going to have my client tilt her head back, and I want to take all the hair that's living in the crown, but more so the center back. And we're just going to comb, and we're going to elevate this to a higher elevation just to gently soften a little bit more of this surface hair where the hair is the longest. This is the longest hair in the haircut. So we're going to go through and just kind of really add a lot of texture. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on to this hair. So all of this hair I cut from that section. So you can see the big gaps and going from shorter to longer. That's a big pocket of air that's in that hair now. So now when we shake it, we have lengths that are jumping up and down, and we get these little short bits that are popping up, kind of supporting a little bit more of a playful version that doesn't get too heavy just in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my blow dryer, and we're going to use with a nozzle as well as a few of these little clips. So if you work in the salon and you haven't seen or worked with these clips, these are like gold at Fashion Week because we have to pay for them, but then we leave them in the girl's hair to set. And they go to makeup, and then they get dressed by somebody else. Those clips never return. So it's like a running joke with these. These are great things to do to work with your clients on. So let's say, for example, our client says, I want to wear my fringe a certain way, but I can't get it to stay there. Adding some product and using these little clips to keep the hairline where we want it. Let's say we want to open this side up a little bit more. These little gems, once you dry it, or you can dry it, then set it in these, or you can just go straight from the get-go. So we're going to dry it with those in there, and that's going to keep her hair set there.
While you're drying the hair, I'm going to attack Nina, and I want to basically get some colour knowledge on how we got this, which is why we can't hear Drew.
Yeah.
Can I talk just like this? Can you guys hear me? Awesome. So for the color, we'll pretend that she's a real person. She started off at a level 10, but she still had a little bit of yellow in the hair, and I wanted to create like a very soft, almost just like a blush tone without the pink being like too overpowering. I wanted it to feel a little bit more kind of lived in and vintage, because I think that pink can easily get very like synthetic and fake looking, but I prefer when it's a little bit more kind of lived in and grungy, but still pretty, if that makes sense. So what I did was I utilized a level 9 violet blue in a gloss range, so it was a demi-permanent. And I utilized a 9 with violet and blue. I used 50 grams of that, and then into that I intermixed 3 grams of a level 6 red. So into 50 grams of a 9 violet blue, I did only 3 grams of a 6 red. So I'm treating the 9 violet blue almost like white paint, and the level 6 red almost as like my red paint. So only putting a few drops into that to create this like blush shade. So it wasn't a pre-mixed formula. I just made it myself, intermixing two different demi-permanents together, a level 9 violet blue and a little bit of a level 6 red. And I left that on. I did the roots first, so that way the roots would be a little bit deeper. And then I just pulled it through mid-length to end process for 20 minutes, and then that was that.
It's getting a lot of compliments. I'm absolutely loving the colour, beautiful colour, and very early on in the video, a lot of people complimenting the colour work. So
Thank you guys.
let's talk about you then. Where can people find you on Instagram while Drew's working away?
Well, you can find me on Instagram. I have 2 pages. So my personal one is Nina Rubel, at Nina Rubel, NinaRubel. And then I do have a hair page, which is Nina Rubel Hair. I'm not very good at the whole Instagram thing. I'm trying to get better. So some of my photos, I like taking pictures of like the process of hair color more than I actually like taking pictures of the end result. So my page is a little weird. It might not be what you're looking for generally when you're looking for a hair page, but yeah, it's kind of weird.
There's a lot of hairdressing fans on there. There is a category for that on its own, and it's process porn, and everyone in England loves a bit of process porn, so don't worry. So do you work freelance as well, or are you in a salon?
So I work in a salon, and I'm also an educator at TG. So I work out of the academy here in New York for TG, and I travel and I educate for them. And when I'm not educating, I take clients in the salon in Tribeca and Brooklyn. So kind of a mixture of both, which I love. I feel like educating makes me more inspired when I'm behind the chair, and then being behind the chair makes me a better educator, so I can actually like give my salon experience to the people that I'm teaching in the salons, as opposed to just speaking something that I don't know because I don't do clients, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Elaine has seconded what I said. We like a little bit of weird. And Tracy Dunbar has asked a question that's for both of you, really, but I presume you can answer this because it's just basically saying, have you enjoyed the lockdown to reevaluate what you want to be in the foreseeable future? And would you be thinking about education and about how education is going with online?
Yeah, so there definitely has been like a lot of positives that have come from this. Obviously, like being forced to take a pause and like have your whole life changed and not know when you're going to work again is a bit stressful. But I think that it's also given like opportunity to really like sit back and get re-inspired by different things. And then with all the digital education that's been going on, I mean, we'll talk about that, I'm sure, but I think it's just opening the door to kind of think about how to offer education in the future, because I think things are going to be very different, and it's kind of forced us into thinking about how to switch that up for the future. So Drew, I'll let him answer now that he's done blow drying, because he's been doing a lot of really cool things throughout this all.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's actually, I'm kind of like mixed on it. There's so many things going on. I think that first off, this whole situation is going to give us a sense of rebalance in a lot of different ways that we need, but it's also going to kind of throw things in the blender and mix them up a bit as far as how it goes forward. At least for myself and with Nina, having the time to kind of reboot and refocus and not allow yourself to stress too much over what you can't control, but look at, it's for myself, it's given me the opportunity to look at Crux brand, a brand that I started 3 years ago, started research on 5 years ago, and in the day-to-day of trying to run that and grow that and create content and make more things, it's really put into perspective what's most important and how to connect with people and like the value of each connection. So I think with education moving forward, I love this new digital kind of like tunnel. It's just like hard tunnel pathway that we have everyone going on and utilizing. It's brilliant. But it's limiting in terms of how we can push it. Looking at doing Zoom, so for L'Oreal Professional, the majority of our classes for the rest of the year, they're all online. We're doing digital format classes because in person, the person's not going to be there. So really, it's like, how far can we dive into education when you're not there to correct body position and to show certain things and Um, what I do know to be true is that it will all resurface. We will find solutions for it all. And hopefully everything will be back to a sense of a little bit more what we would call normalcy. But more than anything, I'm actually just really excited for all of the change and the disruption because it's only making us better. It's making us, value things more. It's making us value the time we have with the client more, the haircuts, the money people spend with us. I think all in all, it's a great time. As scary as it may seem, it's a great time right now to kind of jump on and take advantage of what's going to be moving forward in the future. So now she's dry. I didn't get her 100% dry. She's about 90% or so. And I'm just going to keep adding a little bit more cream into her hair. So what you did see is I just put some wave and some soft ease texture to it just by using my blow dryer in my hands and bending the hair a little bit. Now I'm putting the cream in and really just like lotion. And this is a lightweight cream I'm sorry, it's not lightweight. It's a molding cream. But we're putting it in as if it's like lightweight cream for longer hair to kind of give more of a tack to it. I, for a long time, was using, a lot of the dry shampoos that had the texture bases in them, like Next Day Hair from L'Oreal Professional, and, there's a lot of other brands that have it. And I kind of just got tired of the fuzziness that came with it, with the powder, and I'm loving gel cream type products for those heavier looks that I'm enjoying now. I used to just put oil and mattify it with dry shampoo. Now I like the heaviness of the creams. I always have to step in front. Yeah, there we go. So I'm feeling good with it. We got a bob length feel, longer in the back. The perimeter and the weight line match each other, right? So that's always important to look at in the haircut. Like we have bit balance and symmetry working through. The ends, the texture has consistency throughout. We don't have anything that stands out that we don't want to stand out. And our angles are balanced through here on both sides. So we're looking good, feeling better. And let's do a quick breakdown of the technical part. So we started in the front because the front was the most important for us to cut all of this away. So we isolated everything behind the radial and just went straight down center. We took and did a curved fringe section as opposed to a straight. A straight would lose all of this space. Curved gives more density in the face framing. So starting with a curved section, and we cut that in 3 little parts. Move this up. We went between the eyes, or between the eyebrows, and then the outside. And we went at the bridge of the nose by point cutting, and then we went from that guide down to the cheekbone on both sides. So it's not a true fringe. It definitely has more of a V shape, a heavier, almost kind of like bowl cut vibe to it, but it collapses. It doesn't have a straight across feel. So that was all done in those 3 sections. Easy peasy. Then we worked from the fringe, took 2 diagonal back sections, or I'm sorry, on each side did diagonal back, and we had the rest of the hairline filled. And we went and we cut this straight across, blending into the layers cut from there. So straight across, using that as a guide, working all of these sections where everything was brought on top of itself. So no layering done yet. Repeat on both sides, get balance. Then with the layering pattern, what we did is we did diagonal forward until we did pivoting sections. Everything was brought straight out in front of the profile. So carried over at the profile, and it was cut square to the shape, that slope, the second slope of the head. So everything was brought here, brought forward, cut with that angle. When we cut, we sliced into it. So we got those bits and that kind of variation and movement into it. And all of these sections went to the previous stationary guide. So all of them go there. Cool. Then same thing on the opposite side. When we get to the back, what we did is we took this last little bit. All this hair was cut from the first section. It now becomes our stationary guide. We take a diagonal back and we bring it to our stationary guide at the radial. We cut again, square to the round, similar patterns here, right? So setting things up for ourselves that are consistent, that we lean on. And we sliced through here too. Remember, we had a guide from the front bit to follow here. And then you're looking for when that hair drops out from just below the parietal ridge. From there, everything was brought diagonal back, and we crossed over center. Everything was brought to this stationary point. Flip the side, same thing happens, body position changes. So 2 stationary points at the center, in front, and then at the radial on the side, where everything was brought. Do that. From there, it was really all about control, about the ease of going through and getting weight reduction and weight management throughout it. So remembering as we're going through, keeping our still blade very clear. Still blades here, thumb blade moves. That still blade working parallel with the hair and closing. So it only closes as fast as my hand. If I go through and I close without moving, I cut. If I go through and I go without cutting, the other thing that really helped us was the triple clamp, so making a peace sign through here. Working with that, my fingers on that side of the hair allows my ring finger to come through and create another layer of tension on that hair we're working with. So it enables us to move it, drop it, and still control it in that section. From there, personalizing and pitching and doing different things. This is it's a blueprint for a haircut that I have never cut before, to be honest. Similar to it. And my approach is that I've never done. And it's really more than me telling you what works, what's the best, etc. It's more about showing you we can approach hair very differently than we think. Once we know enough about hair, and once we truly know the ins and outs, we can start a haircut anywhere basically and work our way backwards. So start where it's most important, start where your client is feeling it the most, where they grab. And then the other thing is just allowing yourself that freedom to get in there and cut and rely on the techniques, rely on your training, rely on what you know. Don't be boxed in and say, I have these 4 haircuts, these are all you can do. You know things within those haircuts, break out of it, try some new stuff. As a thank you for all of you guys that are watching this, so it is Tuesday. It's Tuesday, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So as like a thank you for all of you jumping on, Crux brand, the brand that I started making some hair tools and different things. If you head over there and you use Hair Social, I'll give you 25% off whatever you purchase. The Vertier roll-up is on there. That's a collaboration I did with a friend of mine here in New York, a fashion designer. I did his show one year, and we kicked off and made a collaborative combo bag for that. The canvas roll is one of the original products that I made. So it's really, in addition to these clips. So that's kind of the lineup. There's a lot more, plenty of stuff on the website. The social is Crux brand, kind of tells the story about it. Basically, this is all stuff that I started solving problems that I saw in the industry as I was being an educator. I've been an educator for 11 years. Truly love it. And so this is my way of kind of how I can support and give back as well. If you are international, the website is not set up for international shipping. So please, 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 if you're international and you want to take advantage of it, just send me a message either on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever it may be, and I can do that offline personally for you so we can take care of that. If there's any questions, is there anything popping up that we want to handle about this before we...
I mean, I'll give it a second to run through, but there's no questions, just a lot of thank you. It's been great, amazing. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Thank you. I mean, do you want me to keep reading them? Fab, really enjoyed watching. Great explanation, easy to follow. Thank you for sharing. They go on and on and on. I have highlighted in the centre page now the Hair Socials code for crooksbrand.com. So it's on there. It's amazing that you're giving us that. That's something I didn't know about, so thank you so much for giving us that. And what I will do to further to that, because people might not have stayed on for the end just to hear that, if you can send me any sort of imagery or digital, I will post an actual post as well so the whole hair socials can see it.
That's cool so much, Simon. You're awesome. It's a pleasure. Take care, guys.